This is StoryRobot. Welcome to r/Tales from the Front Desk. Our story of today is, a doctor's best Christmas present to his office staff: fire a patient who was rude to you. Okay, this isn't about a hotel. It's about a doctor's office. But they still deal with the public, except their public is often sick, so in a very bad mood, and there's really no other subreddit where I can put it. I hope it's okay to put it here. Too long, did not read. A doctor's Christmas present to his office staff is that each employee gets to pick a patient who was mean to them sometime during the previous year. Doctor then sends a polite letter to the patient saying that he is limiting his practice and will no longer treat them, and offering to send their medical records to any other doctor for free. Several years ago, I was chief operating officer of a mid-sized acute care hospital in a prosperous suburb of a major metropolitan area in the deep south of the USA. I am now retired. One of the things you have to do when you're in the hospital management biz is to schmooze with the doctors. So, for 30 to 60 minutes a day, I would hang around the doctor's private dining room, or other places where they would go when they needed a break, and listen to what they had to say. Doctors like to talk about themselves, so my opinion was rarely requested and even more rarely provided. Some were good docs, some were bad. But one that stood out was a board-certified internist whom I'll call Dr. G. Dr. G was 60-plus years old, fiercely independent, and was one of the few, solo, doctors who admitted patients to our hospital. Most of our doctors were in large multi-specialty group practices. Not him. He was by himself. Dr. G had more business than he could handle. Not only did he have a huge patient base because he'd been practicing for decades, he was a damn good doctor, so many of the hospital's other doctors referred a constant stream of patients to him. Dr. G didn't need money. His wife was an anesthesiologist. They already had a huge house, an equally huge vacation house, several cars and no debt. Their children were grown. He never told me how much retirement money they had, but he hinted that it was a buttload of stocks and mutual funds. He was working because he wanted to, not because he had to. His office was only open 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. He had hired twice the number of nurses, bookkeepers, secretaries, etc., that he needed to run it. So nobody was overworked or overstressed. One day, during the Christmas season, the docs were sitting around their private dining room talking about what they were giving their office staffs for Christmas. The gifts ranged from tacky new office uniforms to useless prepaid detail at a local car wash for the cars of nurses and secretaries who were paid so poorly that they all drove rust buckets, to practical, thoughtful gift certificates to discount chain stores. Everyone had to admit, however, that Dr. G's Christmas gift was the best. Even though he gave each employee a gift certificate that was in the low four figures, that was not his best gift, not by a long shot. It was Dr. G's other gift that got everyone's attention. Every Christmas, each one of his office employees got to fire one patient, no questions asked. It did not matter who the patient was, or what they had done to the employee, they were out. The employee didn't even have to say why, although they usually enjoyed making sure that the rest of the staff, and Dr. G, all knew why. There were some limitations and exceptions. For example, if the patient was in the middle of a crisis where continuity of care was essential, such as during or shortly after hospitalization, Dr. G promised the employee a rain check that the patient would be fired as soon as it could be done without compromising their medical treatment. Also, a patient could never be fired if they were terminally ill. I think there might have been a few other exceptions, such as patients with severe dementia. I just can't recall them all. The staff understood that they could not fire patients who were so sick that they couldn't keep themselves from behaving the way they did. They could only fire patients who were capable of acting like decent human beings, but chose to be beepholes. This was never a problem because there were always plenty of those. When a patient was fired, Dr. G would send a polite, personal letter to the patient, informing them that he is limiting his practice and they were no longer within the scope of the patients that he would treat. This was actually true, although his letters didn't say so, because medical science has no cure for being in beephole. His office would be glad to forward a copy of the patient's medical records to any other doctor's office, free of charge. He did not suggest any other doctor, because, after all, these were bad patients. If the patient had a small balance on their bill, Dr. G's letter would tell the patient that he was writing it off. He continued to use his normal procedures to collect large balances. His staff would also flag the patient in their office systems and records, so that current and future office staff would know to never let that patient come back. Ever. That's it. He had 8 to 10 employees, and he could easily afford to do without 8 to 10 patients, out of the thousands that he treated every year. So, all year long, every time a patient was rude to one of his office staff, the staff person could think, in a few months, I'll never have to put up with your crap, ever again. Dr. G said that it was the best morale booster he had ever used with his staff, got rid of patients that he himself did not want to treat, and cost him practically nothing. Our next story is, the time I had the police remove a group's entire security team. I posted this as a comment under someone, but after rehashing think it's a good post on its own. We had a kids leadership tour group that was a solid $1 to $2 million contract a year. They took all our banquet space, up to 800 people, 3 meals a day, and at times up to 150 rooms for a week at a time. For their contact and liability they had to provide their own security company and would station 3 to 4 people per floor. We had a new management company and GM. She was the worst GM I ever had, just as an aside, micromanaged everything, and eventually led to ownership firing that management company. There were a lot of specific things the security company did that we weren't a fan of, but generally were decent. Her really cracking down. No, they can't take lobby furniture upstairs to sit on. No, it's not okay for them all to be asleep instead of doing their jobs. And hard no, they can't run cords across the hallway for space heaters, they can sit next to them. All pretty good stuff. Except the only people on property when they were there, were night audit and security. My main security guy at the time was in a really bad situation. His dad got a degenerative disease that went from a pain in his leg to only being able to move his eyes and speak through pulses in a breathing tube in a year. After knowing him a while it came out that he was a former gangbanger. In his younger days had been in shootouts in DC. Ended up in a coma for 3 months when him and his friends accidentally went to a party hosted by MS-13. His friends that went with him were murdered. At this point in life was a family man. Had 6 kids, worked 2 jobs. Had been security at a psych ward, addiction clinics, just in general had been through a lot of beep, and is a really calm, chill dude. So one night the security team decides they are tired of us waking them up, telling them to move their beep and stop creating hazards, and when he nicely asks them to relocate so their heater wires aren't across the hall one of them snaps, starts texting and calling the others and like 10 of them corner him in the hallway. He calls me at 2 a.m. on speakerphone after texting me about it. I don't know what to do, they refuse to listen, and I'm cornered. All I did was ask them to move their chair. I can hear everything. Beep you mother beeper, we gonna beep you up. You stupid beep beep, we'll put our beep where we want. You about to get beeped up. I can hear the stress in his voice, sounds like he's going to cry, he's breathing like he just ran a marathon, having a panic attack, and losing control. Mind you, a lot of these security people are like 50 to 60. Boss, I can't do this. Boss, I'm cornered, I don't want to hurt anyone. They won't stop, please stop. I can still hear a beep ton of them yelling and heckling him in the hall. Kids are starting to come out of their rooms to see what's going on. The security guards have no idea about this guy's history. If they hit him or he loses control, I had no doubt he would brutally beep up most of them, and he is trying so hard to be a good person. Look, get out of there. I don't care what you have to do. Hit a stairwell and get to the lobby and call the cops. Stay on the phone with me. I'm going to my car and will be there in 10 minutes. He gets away, calls the cops, and they are like, WTF, what do you want us to do? I evict $1 million contract's entire security team in the middle of the night. Wake up their group leaders and tell them that they and I are security now. When I get there he doesn't stop physically shaking for hours. I tried to send him home, but he didn't think he was safe to drive. He cried. He went over the whole situation over and over. Why would they do this? I just asked them to move a chair. The next day the group's office contacted us like we had done something wrong. I fought with them like hell, sent the written statements. Told them it didn't matter how important they were to us, not a single person on that security team could ever work in our hotel again. They got us an entirely new team, but weren't happy about it. Thank you for watching. Error. Problem detected. Not enough subscribers. Please subscribe, like and comment.